the next speaker, you won't fall asleep because he is a wonderful speaker, okay? Now, what he is going to tell us is the millennial leadership in the aviation industry. And he is Mark Cosgrove, Managing Director, Asia Pacific of PROAKTIV. Mark, where are you?
Hello.
Over to you.
Thank you, Benson. Good to see you. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Cosgrove, as he said, and I work for a company called PROAKTIV, or PROAKTIV if you're not German like I'm not. We come at this kind of in a slightly different angle than a lot of the speakers you've been talking to. We're not in the aviation business or in the technology business, but most of our clients are. So we have a lot of clients in the industry, and what we do is we help them figure out the questions about leadership, communication, sales, business development, and things like that. And so the question we're talking about today is this. We call it impatient strawberries, and I'll get to the title in a sec. So it's impatient strawberries, what young workers really want from their leaders. Because this is a huge challenge, right, for all of us. Have you ever been, if you're a boss, if you're a manager of some kind here, and you have a worker that's, say, under 30, under 35, under 30, and you've probably had a moment where you're thinking to yourself, why do they constantly need me? Why do they constantly need attention? Why do they always want some kind of feedback? Have you had that feeling? I have. I got a guy working for me, and he's great. He's brilliant. He's 25, and there's a lot of communication. I mean, I do communication for a living, and even I find it a bit much sometimes. You know, it's like all this back and forth, and it really started me thinking, like, why is that? Why is it that this generation, what we now call the millennials and the Gen Z, or Gen Z, I guess, if you're Canadian, but the zillennials, and it'll be Gen Alpha soon that we'll be dealing with. Why do they need more feedback? Why do they need more attention from their bosses than we did? Part of it might be cultural, sure. But if you think about it, they grew up in a world that was built for instantaneous communication. Right? That's where the word impatient is coming from in the title of this. Right? This idea that they're impatient for feedback, impatient for communication. They want to know everything always now. And by the way, I don't know if you get the reference, but the strawberries. Does anyone here get the reference of calling the younger generation strawberries? Yeah, I got hands up at the back, yeah. Right, what it is, it comes from, I think it's very popular in China, and I know it is in Singapore, where I'm based. And it refers to the fact that people think that the younger generation are like strawberries, which is they are easily bruised. They're delicate. They need to be cared for and tender, like this, right? So it's a tongue-in-cheek, because I actually don't believe that's what they are. I think that's a simplification and a misreading of the situation. So the thing is, right, the world that they live in is a world that is built for instantaneous communication, instant feedback, constantly, right? We wake up in the morning. They wake up, they open up their phone, they're in their social medias, they're scrolling through TikTok, through Instagram, through whatever they're looking at this week, right? They're getting that little dopamine hit. Something they like, something that enrages them. It's this constant communication, this constant feedback. And it's not just social media. It's absolutely everything. When I applied for university back, 265 years ago, I got my marks from my high school and my things, and I sent them away, and I waited, and I waited. 6 weeks or 7 weeks later, I got a letter back that said, thankfully, congratulations, right? When I applied to do a master's degree, I finished my application on Monday at 9 p.m., and I had my response on Tuesday morning. That's how fast their world works. You want to apply for a bank loan? Instantaneously. You want a credit card? Instantaneously. You want to meet somebody and go out on a date? That's pretty instantaneous too. So how can we then turn around to these people and say, everything in your world happens like this, except for performance appraisals and feedback from your boss, for which you have to wait 6 months? It's completely unreasonable. And you may still resent it. You may say, but Mark, that's just how the world works, and they got to get used to it. That's the world. And I say, yeah, but we made this world for them. So if you're a Gen X, if you're a boomer, or whatever they call it in whatever culture you're from, the fact is, we're the ones responsible for this world that they occupy. We cannot resent people for behaving exactly the way we've taught them to behave. We've just spent 2.5 days here listening to all these speakers. And one of the things that really threads through almost every speech I've heard and every panel is speed. How fast can we get the luggage off the plane? How quickly can people get to the airport? How fast can people pass through security, biometric, this and that? There's people over here with a fully working drone helicopter thing. I don't know what the proper word is, but have you seen this big silver thing? And like they're looking at flying you from the airport to downtown in 6 minutes. So everything is about this. So of course the kids today, right, they live in a world in which we have built them this speed, and now we have to think again about how we lead and manage people. So what do? Because by the way, you can't change it. We can't go back. There's more of them than there are of us. So it is not about making younger people behave differently towards us as their bosses and managers. It's not about back in my day. It's about what we can do to accommodate and adapt and actually utilize it. So what you want to think about is the feedback is not the strawberry reassurance like, oh, poor little baby, you need me to tell you how good you're doing. No, it's about a roadmap. It's about that person who works for you understanding where they stand, where they're going, and how they're going to get there. And this is the essence of what leadership always has been. We're just changing the speed and the cadence of those kinds of conversations. So every single person who works for you only ever wants to know 4 things. If you think about it, I'm going to boil down, and I'm a leadership trainer, but I'm going to boil down leadership into 4 questions with a 5th bonus question later. Question number 1, what's my job? So this is the question where we are clear with the people who work for us what they are there to do. Have we drawn a straight line between our strategy, our direction, where the company's going, what we're here to be doing, what our department's for, what's their function for? Have we drawn a straight line through that to the day-to-day activity of the people who work for us? They need to know what they're there to do. Question 2, what does it look like when it's being done well? What does success look like? Right? That's the standards question. Are we clear? OKRs, KPIs, whatever acronyms you're using. Right? Do they really understand? 1, what am I doing? 2, how does that look when it's done right? And by the way, you may say, I know what's going through some of your minds right now. You're like, Mark, that's common knowledge. But common knowledge is never common practice. The reality is the gap between knowing what we're there to do and knowing how to do it well can be quite great in a lot of organizations. And they usually blame it on, oh, but we're dynamic. It's a fast-changing environment. It's fast-paced. No excuse. 3rd question, how am I doing? This is the feedback. Ongoingly, how's it going? How am I doing? Anything, you want to tell me? And the 4th question, which is related closely to that, I'll get out of the way so you can see it. What can I do better? So these last 2 questions, they really are the questions that the so-called impatient strawberries want to know. How am I doing, boss? What could I be doing better? Was that good? No? What do I need to improve? I did good? Right on. More of that? Okay. That's the conversation on a very simplified level. Because what we're really trying to do is help people understand what they're there for, what success looks like in our eyes, what the organization expects, how they're doing so far, and how they're getting better. The thing about these questions is this is what people want to know every single day that we're at work. Now, you might say, but Mark, this is exhausting. I don't have time for this. It's like this is not about doing something other than what you normally do. This is about taking a new approach to what it is you do as a boss, as a leader. And guys, the great thing about this is that it is not cultural. If you're working in Switzerland, if you're working in Saudi, if you're working in China, if you're working in Singapore, it kind of all works the same way. Because a lot of the, because of the apps, because of being on the internet, a lot of the cultural differences melt a little bit when we get to the younger generations. I guarantee you, people in China, kids in China want the same speed that kids want everywhere else. All right? So we cannot ask people to wait for feedback. Think about it. What is the longest you've waited for something significant in your life recently? Days, weeks? Have you been on the phone to your bank or to the airline booking your flight or changing the flight time, and there was a 12-minute wait on the phone and you were just pulling your hair out? So we're just as bad as them, right? Or just as good as them, depending on your perspective. So why are we asking people to wait for their feedback? Right? Now, I know it's hard. I do this for a living. I even had this experience the other day where the fellow who works for me directly, my marketing specialist, his name is Jeremy, and he would tell me all the time what he's working on. And we're sitting beside each other. But whether we're together or he's somewhere else, like he's back in Singapore today, I get messages on WhatsApp all the time of what he's up to. And I thought, why are you telling me, man? I trust you. Just leave it. It's cool. Do the thing, and I believe you. But then I realized this. As much as he wants to get feedback from me, he wants to give me feedback as well. Feedback is bilateral. It's a two-way street. As much as we should be telling them how they're doing, they need to be telling us. They have a deep-seated need to make sure we know what they're up to. So you really get it on a visceral level when you find yourself reading text messages going, why are you telling me this? That's right, because you're, in his case, Gen Z. The fifth question is what's next? And this, again, is an opportunity for growth for a lot of managers and leaders. How many, let me ask you this way. Just a quick show of hands. Are you concerned with the fact that people under 30 tend to not work at companies as long as they used to? Like we're facing this like they all quit, right? All the statistics, they're job hopping. I ran into one guy and he worked in the hotel business and he said, I worked in a resort, then I went and worked for Hilton, then I worked for a boutique, and now I'm working in a luxury. And when I'm done here, I want to go work for an old-style European hotel. And I said, why are you doing that? And he said, I want to work in all those places. I want all those experiences. And he was like collecting them like, I don't know if you're Canadian, you'll know what a hockey card is, but he was collecting them like Pokemons or something, right? He wanted to work in all those places. But he said, look, loyalty is not about how long I stay with you. Loyalty is about how I behave while I work here. But when I'm done, I'm gone. The statistics do bear it out, though. The average tenure of people staying in a company is now about 18 to 20% less than it was a decade ago. That's the not surprising news. Here's the surprising news. It's the same at every age level. So I'm 55 in a couple of weeks. So if you look right now, average 55-year-old stays 3.8 years. 10 years ago, a 45-year-old, which was me 10 years ago, stayed 4.2 years. So we're doing it too. We're leaving our jobs quicker than we used to, on average, when you look at the statistics. So what's next is a great way to sort of push back on that a little bit. It's a great way to help people understand a vision for themselves, the future in this industry, in this company. So when bosses answer those 4 questions plus the bonus 5th question, people know what they're doing, they know how to do it well, they know what they need to do to get better, and they've had a conversation with you, their boss, about what's next for me. Is it a promotion? Is it a transfer? Am I going to go move into another city? Is it a lateral move, taking on a different project? But they have a clear sense of a future. So we can't ask people to stay in our companies for a long time if we can't create a future for them there. Because this is what it really comes down to. Are you managing people or developing people? Do you guys like the image on the... Everyone recognize this image? If you're a fan of Gordon Ramsay's kitchen, Nightmares or Hell's Kitchen, and he puts the 2 pieces of bread on the young chef's head, and he says, "What am I looking at? What am I holding? An idiot sandwich." So it makes for good TV, but it's terrible management. It's a real clip. And by the way, when I gave this PowerPoint to my Gen Z fella, Jeremy, he's the one who chose the image. It would not be an image I would have chosen, but that's how he felt about managing people versus developing. So it's about showing appreciation. It's about acknowledgement, and it's about helping people see a future for themselves. It's about direction. So when we look at these impatient strawberries, as I said, they live in an instant world. They want everything now, now, now. All right? So we have to adjust how we manage them and how we work with them. So actually, before I talk about this, I just want to say, if you are, in fact, one of those younger generations, here's some homework for you. Right? The homework for a younger person in the room today is don't come to your boss with problems. Don't come up and say, "Hey, boss, I don't know what to do next." Approach them with a possible solution. "Hey, boss, I'm stuck. What do you think? Should I try X?" And it gives the boss, it gives your manager somewhere to go with this. So don't worry, Gen X and boomers. We're not telling you you have to change everything about who you are. We also want them to learn how to manage us as much as anything else. And the other thing is, we want younger workers to also show appreciation to their bosses. Not butt kissing or shoe shining, as we would say in Hong Kong, but genuinely let the boss know when what they're doing is working for them. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create relationships between the people who work for us and us, and to create this kind of new approach to working together. Because ultimately, what I would love to see happen, imagine if we were living in a world where people managed and did the performance appraisal all year long, we wouldn't need the process. Because if I did a show of hands here, how many people absolutely friggin' hate doing performance appraisals? Everybody's hands would be up. Yeah, they're already up anyway, right? Not even HR likes it. Everybody hates performance appraisals. So imagine working towards a life in which we didn't need to have a formal conversation about performance. We knew every day, what am I supposed to be doing? What does it look like when it's being done well? How am I doing? What do I need to get better at? And what's next for me? It would make performance appraisals a thing of the past, and I think that's where we should go. So the challenge then, and I'll finish off on this, the challenge then for us as leaders and managers is to figure out one way for us to start to answer these 4 questions. Figure out how we're going to bring this back into our organization. So the next time you're sitting down, or not sitting down, you're walking through the hallway, and a younger worker asks you a question or wants to interact with you, listen for the real question. Are they really asking you, hey boss, how am I doing? Anything I need to get better at? Maybe that's what they're actually asking you. Maybe that's the real question that underlines what you feel is an impatient strawberry getting at you. Oh, that's me, that's Mark Cosgrove. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate your time. So the conversation today really is about this. It's about how do we get better at finding, hiring, and onboarding and keeping the people who work for us so that we're not faced with this job hopping situation and this constant struggle for high talent. And so it segues nicely into the conversation we're having next, which is classroom to boardroom, exploring career dynamics with this wonderful panel. So I'd like to ask the panel to come on up now.